Hello everyone and welcome to One Teacher, One Scientist chat room. Today we have a leading puppeteer of India, Dadi Pudumjee with us. From winning the Sangeet Natak Academy to being the recipient of the prestigious Padma Shri by the President of India, Dadi has put puppetry of India on the world map. Thank you so much, Dadi, for sharing your insights with us today. I want to understand from you how puppetry can be a very interesting and creative form of expression as far as children go. We usually include puppetry, puppet making in schools. But how do you think serious puppetry can help children express themselves or even connect with their own feelings and emotions?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. Mentioned all those awards, but I think one of the earliest and the best awards is when one was just about starting in Delhi. It must have been 1984. It was a Sanskriti Pratishthan Award, O.P. Jain's organization, and that is what gave you the impetus to carry on with something, not when you finished everything and then you get... Anyway, but coming back to your question, let me define puppetry a little bit. What is a puppet? People mostly, if you're in this part in Delhi, the north part of India, you would only think of Rajasthani Kathputlis. They're Kath ki putli as it's called, and they're string puppets. But there are different types of puppets and different techniques of puppets, and all these 4 or 5 techniques exist in India in the traditional sense. You have puppets in Rajasthan, Odisha, you have in UP, you have in Bengal, Karnataka, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra. All of them have different names because a generic term in English we use is puppet, okay, or putli it would be. But in most cases in India and Southeast Asia, the puppet often is known by the material it's made from, and that's why you say Kathputli. Kath ki putli. Now in Hindi, a puppet is Kathputli, but that is only from Rajasthan. You cannot call a puppet from Bengal or from Andhra Pradesh a Kathputli. Tolu Bomalatam would be the shadow puppet from Andhra Pradesh. Tolu as in leather, Bomma as in figure, and Attam as the play. So each puppet traditionally has its own name in various languages, and that's good. But in English, we say puppet, and it would be, I would say, basically 4 techniques. String, which you work from above. Rod, which you can work from below or from behind. Glove puppets, which most of us know about in schools, which are hand puppets. Or shadow puppets, which could be the precursor to film. We have heard a lot about all of us putting puppets in education and, so on. But I think much more needs to be done. NCRT, Center for Cultural Resources and Training, they have puppet courses for teachers. But I think there is far more need of both modern puppetry, contemporary, as well as traditional. Many of the traditional puppeteers' youth are now working with many modern techniques. And even they're introducing the traditional craft to school kids in different states. So it depends on that. And I think the most important thing for, if we're talking of children, I think we are in school, there are two aspects here of using puppetry. One is puppetry for children or kids or youth, and the other is with them or by them. They're two very different things. One is performing, okay, and professional puppet theater, amateur, whatever, performing for kids, whether it's live performances, whether it's on television or TV. The other, better I would say, when you're working with young people is when they themselves make the puppets or they themselves create with a mentor and put a story together. And this leads to a lot of creativity, imagination, all sorts of things. And our company, Ishara, has been working like that in schools.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fascinated by the work that you've been doing under your Ishara Puppet Theatre Trust. And somewhere, I feel that puppetry can also help in critical thinking in children. What do you think, how teachers and educators can introduce puppetry as a tool for critical thinking? Like when we say application skills, when we say creativity, when we say, analyzing, how do you think puppetry can be one of the tools to help children think critically?
You see, this is interesting, the question, because as you said, you have seen some of our work. When Ishara or the work or my teachers in Stockholm or in Ahmedabad or in Georgia, they said puppets are not an ends in themselves, be all and end all. Okay, so for us, or for me and for Ishara, we use puppets as a means to communicate, and with that, whatever other means of which I have at hand. Puppet is a madhyam, a medium, like pencil, like a song, like dance, like writing a poem. It's a medium of communication, and in Ishara we combine puppets with actors, with masks, with art, with projection, with all sorts of things to tell a story, the theme. And this is where I find it very challenging as well as interesting for young people when they work with it. Because very often when you go to puppets, puppets are little dolls and little characters and all. Yes, they are non-threatening for very young children. But as you grow older, teenagers, I've got some points which I wrote, or I would say words, it increases children's communication and social skills.
Right.
That's one, okay? Emotional development. Okay, puppets can support children emotionally by giving them a friend, talking to the puppet talking to you, or way to talk to other children without being directly talking to them. Now, this is an interesting factor. Ages ago in Stockholm, where I studied, there was something called war theater, war as in hour. It was a children and youth's free time theater. Pedagogues met every evening, and this was the space between school and home. The children came and did drama, music, whatever, puppetry. Puppetry very often was used conventionally. In fact, they would make the puppet character, and from behind the screen, when they were performing with the puppet, they forget themselves. The person, the teacher, or I would say the leader or the mentor would ask questions to the puppet, and the child would speak through the puppet.
Oh, how interesting.
Forgetting his or her, And very often, kids who have problems with language or inhibited or shy come out through this medium. This is something very important.
Yeah, what I can make out is that it can be a very good way of therapy, like, helping children with emotional issues that just might be troubling them so much. So when they get into the shoes of a puppet, they just might release a lot of emotion as well.
Sure. So they're also actually speaking what's in here, but they're speaking through the puppet. They might not want to say those things directly to their parents or their teacher, because they would be whatever. But when they work through the puppet, this is what comes out. And the other thing is that while making your puppets, It's very therapeutic for kids or young people, even adults, because I've noticed that when we are making puppets, whether it's a simple puppet or whatever, there is so much that goes in, and the discussions that happen, which may be allied to the subject, maybe not even the subject, but what all comes out is amazing. In fact, I've always thought maybe one should have a recording and, while we're making puppets, do, because everybody starts talking about things, forgetting themselves, forgetting their egos. This is important. And as you said, when we've done these large things, I think you saw what we had done with Welham Girls' 50th anniversary. And then we've done it with many other schools in Dehradun and at Gems Modern in Dubai. And there, it was very interesting. The way we worked at Welham, and the principal at that point of time, Jyotsna Brau, wanted us to come and interact with the students, stay at campus for a month and create something. Okay? And we work a lot with music or a poem or color, and this is more important for us. We find it visually more exciting. And there was somebody from Doon School who then became the principal at Gems Modern in Dubai, and she said, I want that same experience for our kids, because our kids in Dubai in the school are excellent at studying. I've never seen something like that. You gave them something in the evening, next morning they knew the script. She said, this is what it is, it's very good. But I want them to open up and experience this creative thing.
Yeah.
And believe me, it was interesting. They were all kids with Indian background, their parents, Indian expats. And in the beginning, they were on shaky ground because they say, you tell us what to do and we'll do it.
Yeah.
And we said, I'm telling you, I'm throwing you an idea, you throw back, and then slowly we created. So first week was, for them, but then it just exploded into something. And then we touched upon different worlds. There was a protagonist, 5 young kids, and each of them, one is a very technical person, one likes nature, one likes art, one is very violent. So each of them have their own worlds. And we go into those worlds, which was then done with music, with large puppets, small, images. And then in the end, they ask the audience, and they all argue, what world is the better world? And they ask the audience, which is the world that you want to live in? And then it's left open. You decide what world you want to make. So again, coming back to very simple, puppets are inanimate objects which are given life by moving them, and they tell a story.
How interesting. So, what I can gather from our talk is that puppets and puppetry can actually be a very good way of bridging the right and left brain of the child. Sometimes we always think that a child who's very logical, who's very good with his computational skills, somewhere when they don't get a vent to creativity, or they don't get ways in which they can explore their creative side, they somewhere are very marginalized in many areas. How do you think puppetry can actually be a very easy medium for schools to handle and bridge the gap between right and left brain?
Well, going back to what I said, it depends on how you use the medium. It's very important, and for what age group, that's also important.
Yeah, because somewhere I feel everybody has this mindset that only small children are fit for puppetry. Like, it's only up to say about 10, 12 years, and once they reach their teen, puppetry is not for them. They should be doing more serious work. But what I can make out is that puppetry itself is a very serious art.
Sure. If you notice, all traditional puppet theatre has never been just for children. It was for adults as well as children. There were epics, there were folk tales, whatever, and it was community viewing. All very much so in India as well. And this is another thing from Stockholm. Michael Mischke is the teacher, where for the first time I was introduced to puppetry for adults. Sophocles, Antigone, Bertolt Brecht, using puppets in a creative way with actors, but it was for teenagers or adults. So it depends on how you want to use it. But the thing about it being for kids came in the early 40s, 50s from the West, from the erstwhile socialist countries, communist countries, where they had fabulous big state theaters, puppet theaters. And every child had to go from school at least once or twice in a year to see a puppet performance, because they said that that gives them the thing to go into another theater world. Of course, there were stories which they wanted to put their ideology in, but at the same time it came to other countries and television, and it says Muppets and things for learning which are good, but only for kids, soft toys, pretty cute things. And that's what one has been away from. Yes, if you're working with really young kids, 5, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, maybe. But even there, I find today's children are not necessarily into, what we think that they are wanting to, do. It's very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I see how when we were growing up, like circus used to be such a big thing, going to see circus, going to be a part of a fete, like a mela. Used to be so important ways of community interactions. Today, it's redundant, like you don't see that happening. So how do you see puppetry as an art, the landscape of puppetry changing in today's world, in the digital world today? Do you find a lot of change in the way people are approaching puppetry now?
Well, the generation has changed. As you said, digital and 3D art and computer graphics, things like that. But I can speak for myself. I mean, we grew up at a time when there were no computers. Even at the NID, the National Institute of Design, where I studied in the 70s, computers weren't there at that time, 70 to 76. So it was learning by doing, one. And as a child in Pune, I remember being taken to concerts, music, whether it was Western, Indian, dance, performances, movies. This is very important. Today, it doesn't happen that easily. Today, we're studying. I mean, okay, it's competitive. So by 8th, 9th standard old, parents are also, okay, kya hoga, 98%, 99%, and, that is it. But now that is left to each person. How you want to do. But I find that in school also we had an art class, right? Once a week, twice a week, there was an art class, simple drawing, painting, whatever. Once in 2 months or once in 6 months, a drama production where you made everything, the sets, drops, everything. Schools today want one big annual day performance, fine. But I think it really depends on principal or the person who is the CEO in charge in that school. And I could mention a few names. People might get upset, but like Jyotsna Brar, Annie Koshi from the St. Mary's. We did something on diversity in the sense of inclusiveness. Physically handicapped, body shaming, communal violence. That it was a time when we were talking about lynching and food, one man's food, another man's poison. Now, how do we put that in a group performance? And I said, Annie, we're doing this as well as in James in Dubai as well with Nargesh Kambata. But maybe the children at home are not thinking that way. Your one. It was very interesting what Annie said. She said, this is what our school stands for. And if a parent feels that something is wrong, they will come and talk to us. And then, but this is what I want to put forward in these many years, and that child then wants to do or doesn't want to do, whatever. We put kids that were on wheelchairs on the stage with puppets, and they had never been there. And there was a big shock, wheelchair, kid, are you using this child because he's, things, and he said, no. That's not the case. It was the imagination of this boy on a wheelchair. And what he wants to do, he wants to walk, he wants to fly. And this boy, this young kid, was a UNICEF, torch bearer. And he spoke very nice motorized wheelchair. And he says, but he's not telling you what all he's gone through. Many schools, he couldn't get past the first gate. And then he came into our school. And you did this. Towards the end, before the show, he said, I don't want to do that. People will make fun of me, because he was imagining and he was moving on stage, and the puppets were his emotion or his imagination. And he said, I can never be able to do these things, and maybe kids will make fun of me. I said, I don't think so, because anyway. So he said, no, he was feeling uncomfortable. I said, we left it at that. And then they said, okay, we'll put another person in a wheelchair. I said, no, we'll take it out. 3 days before the show, he came back and he said, I'm doing it. And that sequence, which we've done in now 2 or 3 schools, became so emotional. It communicated, and not only for the child, the boy,
Right.
it was self-confidence that he got in front of some 200 people, and the parents. His parents came in tears. He says, we could never imagine that this could happen, that he would do it. And, so I find using the medium, as I said, not to the end, but to do things with it, dance, movement, whatever, what you want to say, again, another thing about the food part, we have to put humor, we have to put music, and there was these kids, and each of them opens the tiffin box and says, oh, I had idli, this one has kebab, sachi kebab, we don't eat. Yeah, but I eat this. So then they go into the sequence where there's this huge lion puppet, big, and this little boy is tugging the lion puppet, and he's feeding grass to the lion. The lion keeps picking it out until the lion swallows the little boy and pushes him out from the rear. Now, it was a funny thing, but then there was a discussion with the protagonists, with the sutradhars or the narrators, that everybody has their own way of living, food habits, and you have to be inclusive. This was a thing in that story.
So what I can make out is that puppetry can be a very interesting way of bringing out, messages, social messages, and helping children understand things like gender equality and very difficult topics that teachers find very difficult to teach.
Absolutely,
can actually be brought out using puppetry.
I'll give you some example, because gender things, good touch, bad touch. Our group has worked a lot on a UNESCO project ages ago in Salamba, just on HIV awareness and substance abuse. And these were short performances with puppets, masks, actors, where they could be 20 minutes outdoor, bastis, NGOs, schools, everywhere. I'm talking of now 2002, 2003. And HIV awareness, in some schools, they say, oh my God. And we were talking about, we did it interesting. The play was the boss of ignorance and the boss of awareness, the big characters. And awareness says it's in your hands. And if you take care, this is what. The one with ignorance says people will not be able to handle HIV. They manage malaria, they manage TB, but this is something that they will not. So in the enactments, there were 4 modes of transmission, tested blood, syringe, safe sex, which meant using a condom. What was the other one? There were 4. And each time, these were animated with large puppets, objects. Now, in some schools, they got a little queasy. The thing that, how will you show this? Is that, let me tell you that the kids knew more than us. The principal, the teacher were worried. But what was good, that after that we would plant questions, small papers in a basket, and they'd love to come up and speak on the mic. So they would take up a question, and it was a trick question. Is this right or wrong or whatever? And then they would speak, and immediately the audience would correct them. And I also found that whenever it was possible to get into government schools in Delhi, the children were less inhibited compared to our, the fancier schools. Today, the things have changed, but there, the discussions were far more open than in our, fancy public-private schools. We used objects as well. We did a story with shoes. The shoes were the characters. So different types of shoes were animated and they became characters. So we were talking through them, in a certain way about serious issues. And they were music. There had to be humor, because you had to, in 20 minutes, have to say what you wanted to. And at the same time, you couldn't point fingers to somebody when there was substance abuse. It was a UNESCO project, so we had to be very careful that you did not demonize the person. That you did not say, oh, he's a bad guy because he's this or that is happening. And this carried on. We went to Northeast, to Nagaland, Nagaland AIDS Development Association, and they had called a whole group of people for 10 days. We stayed at a site with teachers, recovering users, drug, HIV positive people, and they were then making their own plays which they would take out. And again came back to discussions. It was very, very interesting. Some of the teachers said, why are we spending money on them? They're not going to be there for very long, And then that person who's affected was standing in front and would confront. This was a closed thing, so it was a catharsis. It was more like psychodrama, but using puppets. Puppets, again, the power of puppets. You can get away saying things through puppets, as you said, which will be a little queasy, which we would be embarrassed to say as live actors.
Yeah.
Because the live actor and the audience are both subjective, flesh and blood.
Correct.
The puppet is an object, or is slightly, a little, yes, but it's distance and talking through it.
It's like a screen in between.
Yes.
It kind of takes over the role of the speaker. Like it's like forms like a sort of a barrier.
You see the political satire with Muppets on TV. I mean, if the same thing is done with human beings, it will have a different feel. Or at one time, Lakshman's cartoons, which you would have in terms of India. The same thing, if it was enacted by a human being, would have a different way. It was not. So that's why you can say some things with puppets. And the dictator couldn't do anything to the puppets because, it looks stupid trying to stop a doll. They were very, very communicative. So it's how you use it. You can use it for entertainment. You can use it education, for therapy. Another word that comes also for kids is improving motor skills.
Yes, I was going to come to that. How do you think puppetry can help in fine motor skills?
Absolutely. Both working with children which are challenged, then it's very therapeutic trying to make the puppet and do something, and then it's confidence when it's done and move. And the other is making the puppet. You're talking for the puppet, and then how would you coordinate the puppet to what you're doing? Either you're a character with the puppet, so you and the puppet, or you are working the puppet. And in which case you have to control your emotions and work the puppet so the audience focuses on the figure. These are all techniques, you learn and you discuss these things. But I think through these discussions, it leads to many other things. As I said, I one day would love to record the discussions that happen while making a performance. It's more exciting than the final bit.
Yeah, so don't you think, from our talk, I gather that puppetry is such a powerful tool, and somewhere, just using it for annual days or for annual functions or one-off performance is not really utilizing the power of puppetry in a child's learning.
You're right.
So don't you think schools today are actually marginalizing the way puppetry is used?
Yes, they are. I would say they are. NCERT and all have tried to do workbooks to, put puppetry and creative drama in the syllabus and all, but it comes to something like 1 hour in the whole year. So, it's, but like art, puppetry is a combination of many things. Plastic arts, making something, working with clay, with papier-mâché, color, painting, writing, movement, voice. And when you're doing a production, not everybody wants to do everything. Some like to write more, some like to act. But eventually I've noticed very often the craft ones say, we are not going to get onto stage, we are going to make with you all. But when they see eventually the thing happening on stage, they all want to come back with the puppets on stage.
So huge collaboration must be happening in one production,
This was those annual day shows because there were almost 80, 90, 100, and we would break it into sequences as scenes and then put it together. So they were with puppets, there was the dance. Shadow puppets are working extremely well with young people because simple cutout figures, and it comes a little bit of more technique in it and projection, which they like, because making will be tired. But here they see a result very fast and something to do connected with film, projecting something or working on the OHP, those old dinosaur things that we used to have in schools, and we project and things like that. And that has become very interesting today with young people because they see a result and they see something which is connected to something larger, which they can use. They can use their own shadows, they can use puppets, they can use, they could print things on cells and, put it on this projector. They can use L.I.F.E. So that is also an interesting thing that is happening these days.
Yeah, so one thing very interesting that you mentioned was that it is quick redemption as far as shadow work goes, shadow puppetry. So puppetry that means also like serious puppetry could also teach children patience and perseverance.
Absolutely, a lot. Yes. Yes.
I
We can sometimes lose patience while working there, but yes, you're absolutely right, because when the school in Dubai called us, and what happens used to in many schools is they used to have auditions, and the best kids always get the best thing. Eventually, yes, okay, you're going to find the first, last few, the singers or the actors who can do that. But Mrs. Kambata's idea was that, no, I don't want that. That's what we've been doing. I want that if anybody's interested, you will do a demonstration, you will show them everything, and whoever is interested, in the first it was the seniors, then we went to a junior school, they can apply. Once they want to do it with the parents in holidays and non-holidays, they must attend the whole thing. That is necessary. So this was challenging because then people who never got a chance to be on stage, who they were considered, this one can't do this one can't do that, they went into using puppets and things because they were shy of themselves. The ones who were more open had movement and dance or song. It's, as I said again, how you want to use it and how best the medium and the message has to meet. You should not have a bhashan, but when the human actor and the puppet meet in a creative way with dance or with acting or with masks, then there is something special that happens.
So nice. Thank you so much, Dadi, for sharing your insights. And I just hope schools, more and more schools and children and parents realize that puppetry can be such a powerful medium
Absolutely.
for learning, for self-expression, for just about anything, and even building your creativity. Thank you so much, Dadi, for sharing your insights with us. Thank you.